Hello and welcome to a video on the flaws of voting methods. So in the last video we looked at the 4 different methods of voting that we're going to talk about in this chapter. And in this section we're going to look at the majority criterion to determine a voting system's fairness, the head-to-head criterion, the monotonicity criterion, and the irrelevant alternatives criterion. And then understand Arrow's Impossibility theorem. So starting off with the majority criterion, which is probably the most obvious of all these. It says if a candidate receives a majority of the first place votes in an election, that candidate should win the election. And we have seen one presidential race where that happened, where that didn't happen, when Al Gore won the United States majority, like the majority of the popular vote for the entire country, but didn't win the election because the Electoral College doesn't go by the majority for the entire country. It goes by the Electoral Colleges and their votes within the states, and whomever, the state breakdown is what determines the winner of those elections. So the majority criterion doesn't always win if we use some of the alternate voting methods. So if we got this board of trustees and there's 11 members and they want to hire a new college president. So the 4 finalists for the job are these E, F, G, H, whoever these guys are. And they're ranked. We use a ranking system like they did before. So there's 11 board members. So 6 is a majority. So we got E was the first choice for 6 of them. So he's got a majority. So the majority criterion says they should win. Well, if we use the Borda method, which remember that was the ranking system, so he was first place here, but he was last in both of these. So he only got 3 points in this one and 2 points in this one. And then F, there's 4 candidates, so that's 6 points here. And then these they get 2 points each for being the third choice, so 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. And then they get 3 points. It's 4, 3, 2, 1. There's only 4 candidates. So 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 3 is 9, and 3 times 2 is 6. And then finally they get 4 points here. So 24, 12, and 8. Alright, if you count it up, start with E. E, who was our majority of the first place votes, ends up with 24, 3, and 2 for a grand total of 29 points. Alright, F has 18 here and 6 and 8, so that's 18 and 14, that's 30. FG ends up with 12, 12 is 24, and 6 is also 30. And H ends up with 6 and 9 is 15, and 4 is 19. So that's 32. That should have been 32 there. Bad math from your math teacher. 18 and 14 is 32. So F is the winner by the Borda method, even though E ended up with the majority of the first place votes. So that violates the majority criterion. The majority criterion says, hey, if you're first place, if you win a majority of the first place votes, you should be the winner. We just saw a place where that didn't happen. Now this is what would make that occur. Winning on a majority of the ballots, being first place on a majority of the ballots, and being dead last on virtually all the rest of them. Alright, so we saw that 6 was the number of first place votes that E got, and he was a majority. He should be the college president by the majority criterion, but we saw with the Borda method that F was the one who ended up winning that thing with 32 points. Alright, the head-to-head criteria, what does it say? It says if a candidate is favored when compared separately, head-to-head, with every other candidate, then that candidate should win the election. Meaning if you're going to beat every single person head-to-head, then when it comes time to actually vote, there should not be any way that you could lose. So here's 22 people and they're asked, rank 3 brands of tuna fish, A, B, and C. Who do you like the best? Alright, so if we look at this, A beats B here, A beats C. Okay, so A wins versus B and C there 8 times. Well, let's just do one at a time. So A versus B, like we did. We did this head-to-head like the pairwise comparisons last time. So A and B, B and A and B, B and A. Okay, so A beats B 8 times. Alright, B beats A in these 6 times. Right, A beats B 4 times, and then B beats A 4 times. So 12 to 10, so A gets a point. Okay, now let's look at A versus C. When I do A versus C, I get A wins 6 times, or 8 times. C wins 6 times. C wins 4. A wins 4. So once again, A wins 12. So A wins 2 times. Alright, now B versus C. So B wins here, C wins here, C wins here, B wins here. So B wins versus C 8 times, C wins 6 times, and then C wins 4, but then B wins the last 4. So again, 12 to 4, so B wins 1 time. Now, this is pairwise comparison. There's only 3 this time. So if you remember the formula, I have 3 times 3 minus 1 divided by 2. So I only have 3 comparisons to make, and I made them all. So C never won head-to-head. A won 1 time, or sorry, A won 2 times head-to-head, and B won 1 time head-to-head. But A beats everybody. A beats B and A beats C. So A should not have anything to worry about in this election, right? A beats everybody that A's going to be against. Okay, now let's use the plurality method. So if we, A is favored when it's compared to B. Sorry, I forgot that I was going to do it. I did it already on the first slide, but A beats B and then A beats C. Okay, so using the plurality method, if you look, plurality is just looking at who's got the most first place votes. A's got 8, but C's got 10, and then B's got 4, but 10 is better than 4, so C wins in the plurality method. So even though A beats B head-to-head, A beats C head-to-head, overall, C ends up with the most first place votes. So via plurality, if that's the method we used, then C would be the winner. Okay, so we've just seen that there can be a candidate who wins everything head-to-head, but still loses the election. Or in this case, sorry, taste test. Alright, and then the monotonicity criterion. So what this says is, if a candidate wins election and in a re-election, the only changes that are made favor that candidate, then that candidate should win the re-election. So for whatever reason, if we have a runoff, candidate won and we have a runoff, if something changed between the first election and the second election, and they only change for the better for that candidate, and there's no reason that that candidate should not win the second time. Well, here's an example where it could happen. So what we got here, we got 58 members of some student council, and they're choosing from Bill Gates, Howard Stern, Oprah Winfrey to be their keynote speaker. So after their original vote, a straw vote that didn't officially count, all this group right here that voted for Bill Gates to be the speaker changed their mind, and they want Oprah now. They want Oprah to be the candidate. So they all switched, and basically all they did is bump Oprah up and made Oprah the head, the head choice. All right, but notice what happens as these 8, they bumped Oprah up, and then just slid Gates back to their second choice. As that happens, Oprah goes up and becomes the first place for 20, from 20 to 28 votes. Notice this second choice for 20 of the group, they switched. They flip-flopped and made Howard Stern their second choice. So it went from Gates being the second choice among these first 20 to, Howard Stern being the second choice among the first 20 to him being third among those, and Gates bumping up. So it was a couple of things changed. One, the main thing for Oprah is 8 more people voted for her first place. So she's now 28 votes in the lead. All right, but just notice this first column does change a little bit. So not only did these people change their mind to vote for Oprah, 20 other people kind of changed their rankings as well. Okay, but it was a straw vote. The first one didn't count anyway, so they were allowed to change their minds. So if we're going to use plurality with elimination, who wins the first election, and then who wins the second election? Who would have won the straw vote? Who would have won the second one? So if you look, we got 58 members. To get a majority, we have to have how many votes? So 58 divided by 2. We have to have, divided by 2. 29 votes or more to be a majority. So if you notice, we only had 20 votes for Oprah, so that wasn't a majority. So who got the least amount of first place votes? Well, Oprah got 20, Stern got 16, Gates got 22. All right, so he got actually the first place votes. So Stern would be eliminated. So we get rid of Stern and all of these, and we'd end up with Oprah, Gates, Oprah, Gates, Gates, Oprah, Gates, Oprah. So there's 20 and then 16 in the runoff election, so that's 36. That is a majority. For Oprah, there is 14 and 8 is 22 for Gates in the runoff. Well, now that so Oprah wins. Well, now that these extra, so she won the straw poll, she's got 8 more votes coming her way, first place votes coming her way. But the thing is, it didn't get her to the majority. It didn't get her to the 29 needed to be at 50% or more. So since she's still sitting at 28, we still have to do an elimination. Well, now Gates, who was the second place person last time, is now eliminated because he's got the fewest amount of first place votes, so he's out. And if we look, now we got 28 with Oprah, but we have 16 Stern over Oprah, and then 14 with Stern over Oprah. That's 30 with Stern over Oprah. So now Stern's the winner. So before, Oprah was the winner after we did the first elimination, and then the second one, Stern was the winner after we did the first elimination. So this is a violation of the monotonicity criterion. She was the winner the first time, And you kind of think of it, there's actually two things that went in her favor. One, she got more first place votes, but the person that was in second place the first time got eliminated. So it's kind of like everything was going her way, but it ended up costing her. It wasn't just that, there was the other switching of the biggest group switching from their second and third choices kind of did her in also. So that it wasn't everything going her way, but a lot of stuff did go her way. But yeah, that is a violation of the monotonicity criteria. Alright, and then the irrelevant alternatives criterion. So what this says is candidate wins an initial election, and then they do a recount or something because of the not having a majority. The only changes are one or more of the other candidates back out. They decide, okay, I'm not going to go through the process. I don't have enough money. My candidacy doesn't have enough money to spend to go through a re-election process. Then they back out. They withdraw. So if that's the case, then the first candidate that won the first time should win that election, should win the re-election. So here's what we're looking at. So we got a pairwise comparison method, and it's going to violate this irrelevant alternatives criteria. So we got E, F, G, and H. They're running again. And when we do the pairwise comparison method, who's going to win this election? So once again, we've already seen this before, but when we have 4 candidates, and we're going to make 2, pairwise comparisons, so we're going to end up with 6 total. On your calculator, you could do this little trick to know how many pairwise comparisons you make. You just press how many candidates you have, or how many things you're voting on. And then you're going to press, if you have a TI calculator, math, come over here to PRB, and then this little NCR feature, option 3. So I have 4 candidates. I'm going to compare 2 at a time. I have 6 choices, 6 different combinations I can make. So we're going to pair up all of those and look at who wins when we do a pairwise comparison. So 6 choices to make. Again, just plugging in 4 for n in that formula we saw before. Lets us know we have 6. And then here's the comparisons. You can go back and look at your table. But E versus F, we end up with E getting a point. E versus G, E gets another point. E versus H, H won. So H gets a point. Alright, so that's it with E. So now we're looking to couple with F. F versus G, it's a tie, so they each get half a point. F versus H, F wins in a pretty big landslide. And then finally G versus H, G wins. So who ended up getting the most points? If you look at it, E ended up with 2. H ended up with 1.5. I'm sorry, H ended up with just 1. F gets a half, 1.5 for F. This is E. This is H. Let me just do it in order. Alright, E. F ends up with 1.5 for F. Alright, G ends up with 1.5. And finally H. H1 right here, and that's it. So 1. Alright, so 2 plus 3 is 5 plus 1 is 6. So E gets 2, F and H get 1.5. Or sorry, F and G gets 1.5, H gets 1. So E is our winner when we made our pairwise comparisons. Alright, now, let's say F and G withdraw from the race. So the only 2 candidates that remain are E and H. So if F and G withdrew, and you think, well, E won head-to-head the first time, but the thing was, E didn't win head-to-head against H. So who wins this time? H. H is the winner of the new election, and H came in dead last the first time, using the pairwise comparisons. Alright, so that is the irrelevant alternatives criterion. Why is that irrelevant? Well, because, look, E beat F and G head to head. he beat him head to head, and those are the two that dropped out. So since I beat you head to head, when paired against you, your drawing out should be irrelevant to the outcome of the the rest of it. Well, it wasn't, because one person that you didn't beat head to head remained. So the problem is, with all of these methods, notice we've gone through every single method that we have and shown that there can be a way that it doesn't work out. And that's what Arrow's impossibility theorem said. He showed mathematically that it's impossible for all these democratic voting systems that we're talking about to satisfy all of the 4 fairness criteria, which those 4 are the majority criterion, the head-to-head criterion, the monotonicity criterion, and the irrelevant alternatives criterion that we spoke about before. And Arrow showed, look, if you're going to use a democratic system, you can't get one. You're never going to be able to find one that satisfies all 4. That can never have a loophole or a kind of a way to get around never having to deal with one of these kind of bizarre things happening. All right, so that's what Arrow said. Arrow said that these things that we've been talking about in this set of notes are just they're going to happen. There's going to be weird outcomes of elections. It's going to be rare typically, but that they do happen. It's impossible for it to never ever happen. There's not going to be a perfect system where all 4 criterion are always satisfied.